Welcome guys! Today I want to talk with you about one particular version of Grim Patron Warrior that has been around for a bit now and has been successful on Legend and regular ladder. And this particular version was introduced by StanCifka Mirrari and has been used by Xixo to hit once again the first Legend place in a season. This one was in season 14, which was the May season, and now, almost 2 months later, in the end of the June season, season 15, it has also been used successfully on Legend Ladder by Sjow, who managed to climb into the top 10 with this list. So let's talk about the list in particular. I'm sure you're aware by now of the general game plan that Patron Warrior has. What makes it so successful is that it has a couple of win conditions, like a charging Frothing Berserker, just a big board lead with patrons, big patron board clears that lead into like a huge tempo swing, outlasting opponents with armor smiths and a lot of armor, or especially for this particular version, a more mid-range approach that gets lead tempo-wise and then overwhelms the opponent in the end with maybe a big finisher. So what makes this version different to others is that it has included a little bit more beef. So big bodies like Dr. Boom and Grommash. And that it plays, for example, loot hoarders instead of slams, which makes the whole version, I think, a little bit more like combo deck beginner friendlier or patron beginner friendlier, because it plays a little bit more than a usual tempo deck or like your usual mid-range deck, because you can just slam down loot hoarders proactively. You don't have to hold back that many cards. You can, even if you don't draw into your combo pieces, you can come up with big threats like Boom, and you have a lot of reach with Grommash, for example. So I think overall this is a little bit beginner friendlier, but nonetheless, as we saw earlier, a pretty consistent deck overall. So I think what it makes, these cards make it more consistent in terms that you don't have to draw all your combo cards, but it also makes it less likely that you draw into your combo cards because you usually cut card draw for it. So it's like kind of a trade-off, and it usually depends what you see on ladder. And of course, what you prefer for your personal playstyle. So I'll get over the cards real quick. As you're probably aware of the usual ways they are used, but I'll go over every card so that you can make yourself a picture of that. So Inner Rage is a great card in this deck. Combos well with Battle Rage, so you can injure your own minions. Combos well with Acolyte to cycle some cards. Combos well with Grim Patrons to make more patrons. And you can also kill annoying minions, maybe a Knife Juggler after you use the Whirlwind effect, stuff like that. Or just to trigger an Execute or a Grum with it. Or just to deal 2 more damage with a minion, if you want to. Or you can gain an armor, then trade the minion and get another armor if you have an armor smith on the board, for example. Executes are pretty much no-brainers. You need to deal with threats, and Execute with just 1 mana is a great card to deal with the threat and get some tempo, especially with Whirlwind effects like Whirlwind or Death Spite. They're most likely injured minions on the board that you can simply execute and then play all your mana -1 in a turn to get more tempo. Whirlwind, well, it's kind of like Battle Rage, works well with a lot of cards in the deck: Armor Smith, Acolyte of Pain, Frothing Berserker, Grim Patrons, and of course the Whirlwind effect is a little bit more valuable than the Inner Rage effect when it comes to Grim Patrons, because you can make a patron, run it into something, or just play an Inner Rage on it, and then play the Whirlwind effect, and you will get 1, 2, 4 patrons out of it. Most likely one of them will be useless because it has 1 HP, but you can still like double your amount of patrons on the board. Whereas single target damages like Inner Rage or Taskmaster will only give you 1 more patron. So then we have the Fiery War Axe, which is pretty much a no-brainer. It deals with early threats very well, and usually you want to mulligan for this card in almost every matchup. Unless you... For some matchups you might know, if you know the particular version, like maybe against Handlock it's not that great, but it's still okay to kill like zombie chows to deal damage to other minions as well. Battle Rages are very important card draw cards in this matchup. In this deck you have high health minions like Armorsmith, like kinda Acolyte of Pain, Frothing Berserker, kinda Dread Corsair, Gnomish Inventor. So you might end up with a lot of damaged minions if you do it right, with Whirlwinds and Inner Ages and Trades, and maybe in Deathspite Whirlwind. And then you can draw a couple of cards. Armorsmith helps survive and helps in certain matchups, like Hunter matchup for example, or Freeze Mage. You can get a bunch of armor and make sure that you stay alive until you can finally win the game. Cruel Taskmaster, also nice for the same reasons as Battle Rage. It comes with a body, but it costs more. So a typical example for this deck is like turn 4 you play Deathspite, hit something, and then turn 5 you play Grim Patron, Inner Rage, and hit something else. So you will have 4 patrons on the board on turn 5. Which isn't possible with Taskmaster. It's still a very good card. If you can kill a Leper Gnome or a Mets or Web Spinner with it, it's even better to get early tempo on. You can use it on Acolytes of Pain to draw a card and then trade this away for 3 damage to draw another card. So it's still a very good card, but the cost of 2 makes it a one-off in the deck because it's, well, kind of situational. Like I said, this deck is a little bit less situational than other Patron Warriors might be. So it runs Loot Hoarders, which you can simply slime on the board. And they, of course, fulfill like 2 purposes in the deck. The one is pretty obvious. It just cycles and brings you deeper into the deck. And you play a card and it dies and you still have this card, basically. So you don't get card disadvantage from playing it. On the other hand, it puts a body on the board that can either like trade with minions or that is something that your opponent has to deal with eventually. So if your opponent like wants to hero power it down, if it's a mage or a druid or maybe a rogue, then he uses the 2 mana and maybe like a dagger charge or something. Unless it's dealt with, it also deals a little bit more damage, so we can kill our opponents off earlier with cards like Rum and the other ones. Acolytes of Pain, you know them from a long time in Warrior, especially from Control Warrior, if you play this game a little bit longer. Are just great cards, and you usually want to draw at least 2 cards from them. If you draw 3 cards, they're super powerful. But even if you draw 1 card, it's sometimes good enough, because you cycle this card, it's like same as Loot Hoarder, but they usually soak up 3 damage then. So if this trades against the Flame Imp, it's like a 3 mana, heal yourself for 3 damage, draw a card. And sometimes, not always, most of the time it's not, but sometimes it's good enough. Frothing Berserker is a little bit harder to deal with at turn 3. For health, but are usually used as combo cards with Warsong Commander because they can grow very fast to very high attack values. Like if you have, if the board state is somewhat with something with 5 minions and you play Warsong, Frothing, Whirlwind, you have 7 minions on the board, so the Frothing alone will do 2 damage from its base attack plus the 7 from the Whirlwind, so it will be 9 charge damage already. Not to mention a second Whirlwind effect like a second Whirlwind or a Death by Charge or even more minions, or maybe you already have a Patron on the board, and if you play this combo You can run the patrons into a few minions and let the attack even grow more. So there are a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Frothing Berserker. Of course, Warstone Commander, one of the key cards in the deck. Also, like I said, you can make the Frothing Berserker charge. You can make most minions charge actually. The only exceptions are basically Emperor Thorson, Dr. Boom, or Grommash. And even the Dr. Boom bots will charge. So overall you can charge a lot with it, and of course they enable Grim Patron combos for board clears after your opponent played something like Master for Battle, Implosion, or has a Haunted Creeper, Imp Gang Boss on the board. Everything below 3 attack will give you the opportunity of spawning one more patron and clearing this minion most of the time. Also Sludge Belcher Slimes, of course. Deathspite, probably the best card in the deck. Can deal with most threats, can deal 5 damage to the board on the second charge, and has a Whirlwind effect that enables all of the combos I mentioned, like Frothing Berserker. It's 14 damage with Grom. Like Grom is 10 and the Deathspite is 4, plus the Whirlwind effect. It enables execute effects, makes Dread Corsair cost 0 mana, can injure the Gnomish Inventor for the Battle Rage, so there's a lot of stuff you can actually do with Deathspite. It's also another card you basically want I think you want this in every matchup in your hand, basically. Then the Dread Corsair is just a tempo card which you can play. Let's say you play turn 2 Fiery Warwicks and then you can play turn 3 Dread Corsair and Armorsmith, so to stay alive if you have to. Or you can use it as a charging minion for 0 mana if you have the Deathspite in your hand. So you can do something like I mentioned before, Warstone Commander, Frothing Berserker, but also Dread Corsair, which will add another minion on the board, so another damage for the Frothing from the Whirlwind effect, plus 3 damage from the Dread Corsair on its own. So it fits into the deck. It's a one-off in this particular version, basically because of adding more late game threats. Then you have the Gnomish Inventor. You lack a few 4-drops here because you basically only have Deathspite. You usually don't want to play the Dread Corsair on 4, sometimes you have to, but adding a Gnomish Inventor just seems obvious because it draws a card, has somewhat high health, so you can probably combo it with Battle Rage, and also it's a 4-drop, which contests the board at least a little bit. Then the Grim Patron Warrior, of course, this deck is a Grim Patron Warrior deck, so Grim Patrons can't miss that. There are a lot of options, and I talked about most of them already, to fill the board with them. It depends on the matchup whether or not you want to play like 4 Patrons on turn 5 if you can, or if you want to hold them back with a Warstone Commander combo. Just because some people have board clears, some decks have board clears, other don't. So it depends a lot of the matchups, whether or not or when you want to play them, but you usually want to play them, at least to bait out the one or other board clear. Then the Emperor Thorson, which also enables quite a few combos in this deck, because all your cards are getting cheaper, so you can do stuff like coin Thorson on 5, and then play Warstone Commander, Grim Patron for 8 minus 2, 6, so you can play them on turn 6, where it's actually even more likely that people might have stuff on the board that you can grow your patron army with. And then in the end, I talked about this in the beginning, Dr. Boom and Grommash as more late game threats, so that you are not necessarily forced to have some of the combo pieces in your hand, so you can just play them. And if you didn't play Thorson earlier, you can play this on 7 and play like the Warsong Patron combo, for example, on 8. Warsong Grim Patron combo. And then you can finish your opponent off with Grom. Grom adds a little bit more reach into the deck. It's also nice like against handlocks or against decks where you need the reach. Usually, it's also like big value for the cost, usually. Sometimes you're forced to use them like to clear Keep Off the Growth or something, but they have a lot of reach, so you can close out games earlier. And your opponent has to deal with it anyways. Like, even if you clear Keeper of the Grove, they have at least to have a big game hunter, but you also have the Dr. Boom, so he might not have a big game hunter for that, or the other way around. Yeah, a lot of stuff. This version was pretty prevalent for a couple of time now, and sometimes when a lot of handlocks appeared, people traded one loot hoarder, cycled it out, and added a big game hunter to improve the handlock matchup. So that's kind of a tech choice. The other cards are pretty much fixed. You can of course do like minor adjustments and subtract one Inner Age and add one Dread Corsair. There are a lot of versions out there, but you probably have to play the deck yourself and see what fits to your playstyle and what you usually end up with. But this version, of course, is very consistent. So this was a lot of talking, and now I want to show you some gameplay. Therefore, I'll show you 2 games against 2 different kinds of Warlock. The first game is against Handlock, which of course has a very heavy controllish playstyle. The second one against the Demon Zoo, which has a very board-centric, aggressive, mid-range-ish approach. So you can see how the games unfold differently with against different opponents with different playstyles and paces. I hope it could give you an impression on the deck itself and how to play it. Let me know how you like the discussion and the guide in the comments, and I'll see you around next time. Bye bye.
Versus Gul'dan.
There's so many warlocks around lately. Wow. This would be pretty nice against something like Priest, Paladin, Warrior? Then could play, I don't know. Yeah. I'd probably keep the whole hand. They could make 4 patrons on turn 5. Yeah. It's not even good against. No, it's not even good against both kinds of Warlock. Might be good against Zoo, but against Zoo I probably have to coin out this one against Imp Gang Boss anyways. I'll look at all the cards. Yeah, against Handlock it's pretty much crap anyways. Warsong and Execute are better against Handlock, if it is Handlock. If it's not, the hand isn't great either. Mulligan all cards, so it's somewhat likely it's Handlock. It's of course not sure though. Looks like it. Given that I have 2 of these, that's a pretty good curve. And he wants to tap this turn, so if he plays something like Owl or Dark Bomb, he won't get there. I'm not sure if I want to play the second one into a Hellfire though. Whatever. It's one Hellfire gone again with patrons, I guess. There's the Twilight Drake. I might want to execute this, like Whirlwind. Whirlwind seems pretty good here actually. No, the armor doesn't matter. And if this is at 3, it dies to a lot of more stuff. Battle Rage would be nice though. Could go for the same play again, but I need the Whirlwind effects for the Warsong Frothing later to kill him off actually. Same for the Inner Age, maybe with Grom later. So I guess I'd just do this. Go for this. Turn 5 is where he wants to tap Mountain or Belcher. Against Belcher I can draw another 2 cards. Yeah. There we go. I'm still not using the Inner Ages, I suppose. And now I'm damaged too, so if I draw into a Bell Rage... well, you can easily clear my board though. Huh. That's somewhat sad. Still no... There's still no Frothings. And no Battle Rages. Oh, Battle Rage on this board. Be a dream. So, let's see. I'll probably have to hit this. Okay, let's imagine a Frothing would be Warsong, Frothing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6, 8, 12, plus 3. Ah, it's already a lot of stuff. Well, let's draw some cards, I guess, and hope for a Battle Rage before I have to sacrifice everything. Put him down to 8, but this doesn't do too much right now. Don't have a second Warsong either. How many cards do I have? Looks like 9. So I have to play something. It's not too hard actually. Battle Rage doesn't do much anymore. Let's go with this. Totally armored up, didn't I? Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Means I don't overdraw. That's the second Warsong. Okay. This is going to suck. If I had a Thaurissan myself, though, I could make a funny Frothing turn with all these inner rages, whirlwinds and stuff. Actually, let's see. That's 4, that's 5, that's 7, okay. No, so it's 2, 5, 7 minions. Means I play these 2 and a whirlwind. Means 9 plus 4, 13? Oh. Still far from being sufficient. Oh, that sucks. Well, let's go with this one then. Guess I'll have to do face tank it here. I've drawn so many cards, but no really good ones. Okay, that's 8, 9 damage next turn. I'm T11. Oh, that's a good card. So let's see, 11. 11 should be too hard for him. Like even double Dark Bomb Hellfire isn't quite it. Could be it with a Boombot. Let's plan the next turn. I would have liked to see my second execute, but otherwise, and the second Frothing, of course, so that the Whirlwind would mean even more damage. It's not a good Drum turn. So I have 9 mana next turn. This will be 6 plus choose 8. Okay, so I could actually do a lot of damage next turn. So I'll just make sure to get there. And he can't Molten taunt or something, so the biggest thing he can actually do, I think, is taunt this up and maybe play Mountain Giant with it, which would be pretty bad. But he still has to get rid of this, so let's see what happens. No. Okay, well, this sucks. Seems like he wants to. Okay. I think I've got this. I haven't done the math yet, but I think I got this.
Almost out of time. I wonder.
2, 4, 8. Okay, forget about the battle rage, doesn't matter.
Charge forward! Must bleed be thirsty. A fight cold.
Do you want to whirlwind now? Don't think so.
Everyone, get in here! Pile on!
So that's another 8. That's 8, that's 8. 16 plus, okay. That's so much enough. Okay, looks like he conceded. Nice.
Versus Gul'dan. Your soul shall be mine.
And another Warlock. It's many Warlocks today. Guess I'm fine with keeping... He kept 2 cards, probably Zoo. Guess I'm fine with keeping the Loot Hoarder. It's like... basically, like tossing it back and drawing another card. No weapons though. That's a problem.
Why do you call?
Thought about coining it out to Taskmaster at the next turn. I can probably just Acolyte Taskmaster or something. Acolyte Enrage. Sand looks pretty cruel.
Pain speak to me.
Wow. Really? 3 draw Acolyte? Oh, even more because of the Battle Rage. That's cool.
What now?
I guess he either plays Implosion, or Argus, or a Void Caller next turn. All of which I don't really have an answer for, and I should have tossed this back. I know, can totally see that. Yeah. Okay, that's at least something. There's a weapon. At least he didn't put up much pressure until now. Still kind of rough though. And there's the White Collar. I could answer like hit, Taskmaster, Inner Rage, Execute if it's something really bad. The question is, do I want something else? Could Froth. This egg is kind of annoying too. But just throw down a Frothing like that.
Bring the pain.
If he's got a Doomguard, I want to know it now, I guess.
Back to work.
Still don't have Patrons or Thorson. I'm still sitting on this loot harder, so definitely a mistake to keep this. Oh. Where's my death spite? Oh, face. Even if you void terrors, I mean, that's weird. Why wouldn't you clear this? This would have made sense if you played Implosion, I guess. Oh, nothing else. Okay. Now I can kill it with War Axe. That's huge. I still have the Whirlwind if he plays Implosion at some point. So I can just play the Frothing and make it somewhat big. Looks like a pretty decent plan so far. See how this loot hoarder is still sitting there? I also have a second Frothing, and I can play the second Frothing with Warsong next turn. I guess there won't be a reason to. Okay. Life Cycle Implosion kinda sucks. Especially if he doesn't hit for 2, but for 3. But okay. I guess I'll just have to Whirlwind. Oh, that's a great tactic. I think. Yeah, should be. Fortunately, I've used both Inner Rages and a Taskmaster and a Whirlwind. So I have Death Spites 2, which I don't have, and another Whirlwind, which I don't have. That's like 3 out of these 15 are actually useful cards right now. And he won't play below 3 attack minions, I guess. Oh, well, he didn't. Okay, so I can play the Warzone. Ah, he didn't. I see. This makes sense. Oh, the Whirlwind. That's great. Means I can make 2 other patrons, one of which can spawn there. If I play the Whirlwind, I can also play Loot Horde afterwards. I could also play the Frothing for Brazilian damage. Let's see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could really charge his face there. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's so much damage actually. I should probably do that. 4 plus 6. That's everything. I probably missed 1 patron or so because of the animations, but who cares? Yeah, this one I think. That would have been almost lethal then. He couldn't have tapped if the animations wouldn't take so long, but probably doesn't matter. Not with this kind of board. Well, since it wouldn't have mattered, it didn't matter.